Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the three circles of risk, or in other words, the attributing factors to any outdoor activity. So one diagram that you're going to need to become familiar with is the risk attribution diagram, which is made up of our three circles here. So when we think of any outdoor activity, or any activity in fact, we think about the factors that increase the risk or make that activity more hazardous. So there's three areas that these factors can come from, and they are people, environmental, or equipment. Okay, so what we're thinking about is we're thinking about a scenario when everything's going to go perfectly. So let's use the example of bushwalking. And we're going to talk about all of the things that we need to have in place and we need to have correct for our bushwalk to be a success. And then we'll have a look at what happens when we start removing some of those factors and where we end up on the diagram. So with people, factors that can go into the people column are, we have the instructor, okay? And along with the instructor, we are things like qualifications and experience of that instructor. So not only do we need to have an instructor, we need to have the right number of instructors, so that comes into ratios. But we also need to have qualifications. And along with that, we also need the appropriate level of experience and the appropriate level of experience in the terrain and the area that that instructor is taking their group. So as you can see, each of these individual points can be unpacked a little bit, but we'll go into more detail a bit later on that. Also in people, we would have the participants. And things to consider for the participants are things like participant experience, participant ability, participant fitness, and to a lesser extent, I guess, the gender balance of those participants and the need for that to match the instructor gender balance as well. Other things that fall into people would be parents. If you're dealing with students that are under 18, then obviously there's some level of consent that's going to be needed. So we'll just put consent in there because that would fall under the people category. So let's just leave that alone for the moment. We may come back and be able to top that up. Let's move on to now thinking about, for a bushwalking scenario, what are some of the environmental factors that may affect the risk or the mitigation of risk in that activity? So we would definitely have the weather. Okay, we would definitely have the terrain. Other environmental factors. We could have, I want to say animals, but we're talking more about, I guess, animals that may hurt people or increase risk. So we might just put animals there, but we're talking about things like snakes and spiders and things that might cause injury or increase risk of a participant. Other environmental factors may be the elevation. Okay, so obviously the higher you are, the more altitude you have on your bushwalking or trekking expedition, the more environmental factors that may come into play. So we're going to say altitude as well there. Okay, moving on to the equipment. So some of the equipment that we need to factor into a bushwalking expedition would be so rucksacks, tents, cookers, let's go boots or footwear. Communications goes into equipment. Things like radios and sat phones and making sure you've got the right cover. So you start to get the idea, okay? So we've got people factors, we've got environmental factors, and we've got equipment factors that all are going to affect the level of risk of our expedition. Okay, now when we get all these factors right, you can see that we're operating in the green circles, and green is good to go. So when we get all those factors right, and all of those things are ticked off, then what we have is we have an expedition or an outdoor activity that is being set up to be successful and low risk. Okay, so when we have qualified instructors, we have the correct ratios, we have participants with the right ability in the right environment, and we have consent from adults and their caregivers, then we have the people area stitched up. If we take these people into an environment that has had the weather checked and the weather matches the participants' ability, we've assessed the terrain, we've worked out that it's not too steep and it's not too easy for the participants, then that's ticked off. We either know that we're walking out of season, so we're not going to see many snakes, or we're prepared in terms of, let's add first aid down here. We're prepared if we do see a snake. We've thought about the elevation and the altitude and whether or not these participants can cope with those factors. Okay, so we've thought about all of those things, and we've also made sure that all of our participants have appropriate rucksacks that have been maintained and matched to their body size and shape. We've got working tents that if we do have unfortunate or extreme weather, then those tents can cope with those conditions. We've tested all the cookers, the participants know how to use them, so that's good to go. We're going to be able to have appropriate food. We know that all the participants have appropriate footwear that's going to hold up for the expedition. We've sorted our communications, so we've got the right phones that are going to work. We've got radios to connect the groups while they're out walking, and we've also managed our first aid appropriately so that all groups have kits. Okay, so we've made all these things good, and so we're green. We're good to go. Okay, let's have a look at when we start removing some of these factors and what actually happens. So if we have, let's start with the people. Okay, if we have unqualified staff who have never been in the area before, they might be a school teacher, so they might have their school teaching qualification, but they're not trained in the outdoors and they haven't been in that area before. And all of a sudden they take a group of 25 students, just one of them, they take 25 kids into this area. These kids have never camped before, they've never done, a bushwalk before. And the teacher thought it was a good idea just to take these kids away without any parental consent. Okay, so basically we've done nothing right in this people area. Okay, however, this group has gone out in beautiful weather. The teacher was smart enough to check the weather forecast and yep, going to be nice days. They're going on really easy terrain, okay, so it's all pretty flat, they're staying on tracks. There's no snakes around because they're in the right season, and elevation and altitude is all pretty minimal, so that's all fine. So this area stays okay. And the teacher was smart enough once again to know that they needed good rucksacks. They hired some really good tents off of another company. They did a little bit of research into cooking and thought, okay, I'm going to cook for the group, so they're not going to expose the kids to that risk. And everyone luckily had some good sports shoes that they were told to wear. Okay, so our equipment was all okay. However, because we got the people so wrong, we are operating in this blue area here, which is basically saying these two areas, this is where we're operating. So we're exposing ourselves to some level of risk because we got these factors wrong. Okay, now I'm not going to give an example of when this is all right but this is all wrong, or this is all right and these two are right and this one's wrong. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all those different examples, but you should be able to see that getting it wrong in one area, as long as your other areas are spot on, then you'll probably get away with it. All right, so this area means there might be an injury or something might go wrong, but you can manage it because these two areas are okay. However, what happens when we get 2 areas wrong, or in fact 3 areas wrong? Okay, if we've got incorrect people in an incorrect environment, okay, with not very good equipment or malfunctioning equipment, then that's when we end up in this red zone. Okay, now the red zone, I call it the zone of death, because pretty much if you've got all of these things wrong, then something bad could happen. All right, I'm not saying it will happen, but you're setting yourself up for that red area. Okay, so Pretty simple diagram. I like to think of it as in when you're thinking about risk, you're thinking about those 3 areas. You're trying to exhaust those 3 areas. What could possibly need addressing in each of those 3 categories? And you can apply that to any outdoor activity. Okay, enjoy. Thank you. Bye.